Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show here on WSBA, where you can reach me by going to gary.sutton@cumulus.com or on Twitter at Gary G. Sutton. Don't forget to check out our great website at newsradio910.com and facebook.com/910WSBA. This next guest, having kind of a tough day to start with. He headed to the Lebanon VA. He's a former veteran who served in Iraq. He also was at Fort Hood during the first shooting there, Major Hadal Hassan killing 13 people there. And with us this morning is Ryan Walton, former veteran and one of the heroes who live among us. Ryan, good morning to you.
Good morning, Gary. How you doing?
Well, better than you today, I guess. You had to admit to the Lebanon VA. What's going on?
Oh, just got some health problems. Got some just the same things, some back issues, same as before, and getting them squared away here at the Lebanon VA. They're taking good care of me up here, and they're doing a good job. So,
Ryan, for people that don't know you or don't know of you, give them a little bit of your history as far as your service and where you've been.
Well, I've as I spoke before, obviously a lot of people know the number one place I've been, but I've been to Mexico, did border patrol there with the National Guard here in Pennsylvania, 28th ID. Went to Iraq, to Mosul in 07 to 09, and of course in November 5th I was at the first. And unfortunately, we have to even say the first.
Right.
I wish we didn't have to say any, but the first Fort Hood shooting. And, that really took a toll on my life. I mean, especially being in Fort Hood. I mean, that's a place where, my wife and, we forged our family. I mean, we brought our family up there. My son was born there in Scott and White, and the same place that I donated blood and things, and other soldiers have, and it's just that's the key place I was at. I was at other bases and Fort Sill and Fort Knox and things, but I ended up staying at Fort Hood and stayed there for a total of about 6 years.
Ryan, a lot of people, say, you go overseas and people worry about the physical disabilities that could be created, but there's also other disabilities. But talk a little bit about your physical health and, what happened in Iraq to cause you to have some real back problems.
Well, honestly, Gary, it was a number of missions. I was everywhere from, places I'm not going to name over the radio, obviously, but, I was up on mountains. I was out on missions. I was out on different occasions, in situations where, I should not have been had I have not been in the military, but I had to do what I had to do because, as you know, when you have a boss ahead of you, it tells you to do something, you do it.
Now, one of the things that happened to you, though, I guess, one of the problems that you have there, and I did not know this until I read about this, about where there looks like there is land, there is not really land sometimes, and that certainly hits you, right?
I apologize.
No, I said there are places there in Iraq where it looks like there's solid earth, which is not necessarily solid earth, and that certainly affected you. I think you stepped into one of those areas, did you not?
Yes, Gary, I did. That was one of the biggest things that hurt me the most is when I stepped out on one of the missions. There was a 4-foot hole that was covered in what they called moon dust, and when I stepped down that, my right leg went down in there, and I think that's what caused a lot of my neuropathy in my right leg, and went up my back and caused my back issues.
Yeah,
the biggest concern.
I know one of your concerns right now is about, the words PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome or post-traumatic stress disorder. And, a lot of people, as soon as this happened last week and this Yvonne Lopez, a specialist there, opened fire, first things you heard out on the news was PTSD. It turns out it is not that right now. And yet, by the same token, people who have PTSD are not necessarily all unstable, and they shouldn't be marked as such, right?
No. I mean, first of all, Gary, mental health conditions, they're common. Right. PTSD is just one of them. It's a product of different interactions, psychological, historical, social factors, anything that happens in somebody's life. And when it comes down to it, honestly, studies may show this or may show that, but honestly, 50% of Americans, will meet some type of mental health diagnosis, whether they want to get help or not.
Well, and traumatic experiences are not just related to overseas,
right.
And yet we don't get them as regularly in terms of people who are truly in the action as people would serve overseas, and daily having to face life and death situations, for example.
Right.
Normally, none of us go through that quite as up close and personal as you all did.
Right, and that's one of the key things is having those constant violent interactions and violent. You're taking cover, you're hearing bullets go by you, things like that. You're hearing explosions, mortars, things like that. Those day by day take a toll on you, and that's one of the biggest problems is that. So.
You were in the theaters of action. Obviously, you exchanged fire, and you had fire come past you. Is there anything in your training that gets you ready for that? Is there anything where you can really, whenever you get into the real thing, that gets you ready mentally and emotionally and psychologically for that to be happening back and forth?
No. I mean, you can train all day. Police officers that, I have utmost respect for them. They have a decision to make in a split second, just like we did over there. But, you have to make that decision. You have to make those choices. There's no training for that. You're looking 300 meters down, on a range, and you see a green plastic target pop up. Yeah, you shoot at it. You get points for hitting that. You don't get points in Iraq,
right?
For hitting somebody or hitting something. And if you miss, it could be your life. If you don't miss, and there's somebody else on another side, it could still be your life. That's the difficulty. That's what I prayed about every day, every time before I went out on a mission with my friends. Were those things is that we didn't miss our mark, that we got the job done, that we came home, and that we got what we need to get done.
Talk about when you came home, and were you diagnosed with PTSD or any kind of aspects of things that you had to really get some treatment for, get some help for?
No, honestly, no, I wasn't, Gary. I came home, and fortunately, I met my wife, Crystal. And I can tell you what, and I'll say it honestly, I drank, and I don't drink anymore. But I will say that, honestly, that it's something that isn't recommended. Go get that help,
right,
and things. But at the end of the day, I'm thankful I met my wife, because my wife helped me to get things completed and get things that I needed to get done to get better. So,
what's the hardest thing for veterans who are coming home, who are trying to go from that life that you talked about, being out on missions on a regular basis, to now coming home and coming back into a place far more sedate, far more, I will say, normal by comparison, and daily life? Daily life, it seems to me, can almost be mundane, boring compared to where you were at before. I mean, how much of a acclimation is it to get in here and kind of get used to it again?
It's very tough. It's very tough. I mean, you're coming back to, something. I mean, it could be anything from you driving and needing to, get around somebody in a passing lane. It just takes a hold of you. I mean, and that's one of the scariest things.
Do you encounter, I mean, what do they do to help you with anger? I mean, when you're doing your job every day in Iraq or wherever you might be stationed, what do they do with you in terms of talking to you about anger, maybe getting in the way of doing your job? Is there anything that's given to you there in terms of some training in that regard?
Do you mean when you come home? Is that what you mean?
No, actually, while you're there, I mean, I guess there's a lot of things they say. Hey, you got to keep a clear mind. You've got to be out on your mission. Let's say in your case in Iraq, and you've got to, anger shouldn't be in it. It should be something. What kinds of things should you be feeling when you're out there?
It's honestly, it's hard to say. I can't answer. I couldn't answer that. I mean, it's focus, I guess, is the thing, and then keeping your mind right. I mean, that's I guess what I would have to say. I don't know.
Fate puts you at Fort Hood for this first, and again, I'm sad to say, first shooting with Major Nadal Hassan that turns out, even though the president has called it workplace violence, most of us would look at it and call it terrorism when a guy's calling Allahu Akbar when he's shooting these people. You were there, and you weren't just there on that fort, but you were there right at the moment that this was happening. Take us through, and I apologize, I know it's difficult, but take us through what happened before your eyes at that point and what you kind of just waded into.
To be honest with you, Gary, I can't go over that on the phone. I mean, I don't mean to be rude by saying this, but my wife doesn't even know everything to this day of what I went through that day.
Yeah.
So I can't go into that right now. I can't divulge that right now.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that it wasn't workplace violence. Say that.
No, I know that, but you actually helped to take people out of the building while there was actually shooting going on. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that I did do.
That's the part I'm talking about. Not so much your feelings, but the part about what you actually had to do at that particular point. What was happening there? When you went into that, did you have any thought about anything? I mean, obviously you were back in a combat situation here on a home base where a guy in your uniform was shooting other guys in your uniform and ladies. But you waded into there anyway. Tell us a little bit about that part.
Well, I can tell you this right now. My first thought was making sure I got home to my wife.
Yep.
Making sure I somehow got word to her, and
Yeah.
It was tough because the phone lines were down. It was like like they said in 9/11, how everything happened up there with the phone lines. They basically couldn't get a phone call out. And it was my phone died before I could even do anything. I mean, it was crazy. There was no way to communicate. It was. I just can't imagine what they went through for a second time.
Yeah. We're going to take a break, Ryan. We're going to come right back. We're going to talk a little bit more about, what should be done for Veterans Day. Are we doing enough for veterans back home? Obviously, you're in a facility there where they're working very hard with you right now on some physical issues, and we're going to come back with Ryan Walton here on the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. You're welcome to make the call, 1-800-357-0910. I'm Gary Sutton. This is the Gary Sutton Show on News Radio 910 WSBA. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show. We are joined this morning by Ryan Walton, former veteran who served in Iraq, was also at Fort Hood in the first attack, and with us here this morning from the Lebanon VA hospital where he is being treated for, and again, that's neuropathy, right, Ryan?
Neuropathy and some other significant health issues, but nothing related with my PTSD. I did want to say something to you, Gary.
Go ahead.
I wanted to put this out there. I think it's very important for everybody to know, obviously the reason I am at the VA is the care is important to the VA because the civilian providers need to understand what it is to have PTSD as well as other nurses. They shouldn't just have to work for the VA to know what PTSD is. It's very important for other people to know and it not get brushed off like it's nothing.
Yeah.
When a veteran comes into the hospital and he says something's wrong, and it comes down to he has PTSD, the last thing you want to do is continue to jab at him, and push him to the point where he might get upset. So that's very important for people to know that, and it is a scary thing. There's I feel two sides to it. There's an emotional side and a physical side, you don't want to upset people.
I think a lot of us are getting more sensitive too to the more or less the wounds you can't see when people come home. Exactly. If they don't have a physical wound, but they may be, I can only imagine, again, because we weren't there, and I can only imagine the shock of coming back into a life. And I've got some very dear friends who I've talked to and said, man, it's really, really hard, as you mentioned earlier. What can people do right now for our veterans who are coming home? What should be done in your opinion? I know you're getting some great help there at the Lebanon VA hospital, but what other things can be done? People say, thank you, I'm sure, to you a lot, and a lot of veterans come back and say, I'm just doing my job, and kind of the way you talked this morning earlier. But what can people do in our society to make life better for veterans returning home?
Put your hand on their shoulder and thank them. Don't come up behind them and do it, but
yeah, right.
Just shake their hand. Say thanks, soldier. Thanks for what you did. Or something of that nature. Because the biggest thing is we're hurting too. Everybody has wounds that they don't see, but the biggest things is that it needs to be known that it's a painful thing to go through, because it's not just the soldier, it's the family,
right.
It's the mothers and fathers, it's the wives, it's the children, especially the children. The children are so young, they see it, they notice it, they know what's going on. It's a horrible thing. It's contagious. Yeah. In a way, and it's a very scary thing. It upsets me every day, and I have PTSD. I'm retired for my PTSD alone, not even my physical injuries. So I'm a retired veteran is what I am. And when it comes down to it, the PTSD is the reason I am retired, and the things I saw, the things I had to do, and I did them because I wanted to, not because I was told to. I volunteered for this man's army, and nobody told me I had to go in.
Now, you were from Dover originally, right?
Yes, I graduated from Dover.
Dover High School. So you were an Eagle at one time. When you first went in to serve, okay, you said you wanted to go in, that you volunteered. What led you to that? What took you there?
Well, to be honest with you, I wanted to serve my country. I wanted to follow in my family members' footsteps, and I wanted to go over and avenge 9/11. Yeah. I wanted to go over and fight for my country.
There are a lot of people.
And I watched 9/11 happen live before I went to. It was student fair day in Dover, and we were getting ready to go to the fair. It was a half day at school, and I watched 9/11 happen live right on TV. So, I'm sorry, it wasn't a half day, it was a day off. And I watched 9/11 right with my mom happen live. So.
And I was sitting down there that day doing my show live, and I remember, sitting there and watching all this take place on TV just before my show started, just after it started. And at that time, it was 9 to noon. And much the same kind of shock. What would you tell people here at the end? We have about 30 seconds left. A final thought here for helping our veterans, especially those who have been afflicted with PTSD and maybe some of the other tough mental issues they deal with coming home.
I would just say make sure you reach out and get help. Don't let the first thing you do is grab that bottle. Don't grab that bottle and start drinking your sorrows away. If you have kids or a family, talk to them the best you can, but most of all, try and get help. I tried doing it on my own for a while, but you need companionship. Yep. You need family in your life.
We need to be there too. We'll have to end it at that. Ryan, great having you in this morning. I'll look forward to talking to you again soon, my friend.
We'll talk soon, Gary. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Ryan Walton with us here this morning on the Gary Sutton Show. A couple little motivational remarks today. This one from Vincent Van Gogh. If you hear a voice within you saying you cannot paint, then by all means paint, and that voice will be silenced. And Aristotle, there's only one way to avoid criticism. Do nothing, say nothing, and be nothing. Wow.